Welcome, Rich Baker and friends. My name is Rich Baker, and I have two friends with me today that I'm very excited about. Shannon Mahoney, Jeff Bomberger, amazing people, smart, funny. I don't know. I could say a million great adjectives. Thank you for being on the show, both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We are all three of us multifaceted. We're a lot of things, writers, creators, performers, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the thing that binds us, I think the bond between us that I'm most interested in, at least today and in general, is that we're really empathic people that want to just help other people get through hard times and any times, really. And now, the world's facing one of the harder times that maybe it's ever faced, at least in the last, 100 years or so. So what's up with life now? How's this affecting everyone? Jeff, start with you.
Sure. It's been interesting. Life hasn't changed too much since I'm kind of always self-quarantined in my place.
Oh, okay. Mine is business as usual.
In a way, yeah. It's a little bit funny, like when you're editing video and stuff like that, you pretty much do that in one spot. And so in that regard, life has kind of been similar, but it's been different. And obviously, it's a little bit strange to not be able to go out, right, and share space with people that you really care about. And but that's definitely, things have shifted in that I'm spending a lot of time doing stuff like this, a lot of times on Zoom and on FaceTime and doing readings for people and meditation consultations, that kind of stuff. So yeah, in a way, it's kind of kept me a little busy. Yeah,
I bet. And I want to go into all those things that you just mentioned briefly, but Shannon, and we were talking just before we started recording. You said you never really used video chat before, and now you're using it all the time.
Yeah, minimally for work, but it's really interesting too, because with my business coaching clients, I also had really shifted away from online. I did a lot of study around online marketing and content creation and all of that, and then I kind of landed for me on really knowing that for me authentically, like a lot of one-on-one, in-person events, things like that are kind of more my niche and my strength and kind of, making connections with people and that sort of a thing. And so coming into this year, I had a very focused in-person plan for how I was like this year's sort of launch with the different aspects of my business. And so it was an interesting sort of confrontation to have to stop everything and not just take on everything that maybe didn't make sense for me, but like find the balance, kind of see what suited me and like, what's that happy middle, what's sort of like the replacement for what I was trying to do in person. And it's interesting what you say, Jeff, about already kind of living a lifestyle that's very home-based. I work from home, and so I'm either working independently from home, but what's been an interesting shift is that I have clients come into my home, and making a space for people and making it inviting and sort of setting a tone and an ambiance and all those things is really satisfying to me, and I really enjoy that. And so even though it's been super normal to be at home a lot, it's been very strange to not be inviting people in and creating something for them. So trying to figure out again what's the replacement for that, and making friends with technology to still assume that we can kind of like generate that same kind of space in a new way has been very interesting and sometimes challenging, but
yeah. Sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
How about you, Rich? How's it going for you?
I mainly teach improv, and we started teaching improv on sketch and screenwriting and different things like that. And I'm doing it on Zoom now mostly. And honestly, I love it. I miss seeing people, of course, but I really love like not living in LA. There's so much. Leaving the house is a big deal. There's traffic and parking and weather and just like and rude people. And I mean, there's so many things out there that I would have to deal with when I go. And I know that they may not seem like much, but relative to me, I'm like, those are the things that just like, oh, I'll go, but and now I'm like, oh, we just all do this. Cool. I can do that. I miss hugs.
So life is less stressful.
Life is in some ways it's less. I would say in the ways that it was most stressful. In the ways it was most stressful before COVID, those things have actually relieved, but in other ways, there's new stresses.
It's like it trades. Yeah. It's interesting what you're saying. They're like, oh, we can do it this way. I was thinking I used to teach dance for several years and I've been away from it. And I had another thing I was kind of going to get back into, and then all this happened. But then the other day I was talking with someone, and so I'm probably going to plan some online stuff that's just for fun, like get people moving, dance in your living room kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I started to think, if that works, like, that's how I'd want to do that. Like there isn't like a studio that I want to be a part of right now or anything. And so I was like, if we go back to normal and I can just do living room dance party, on my Zoom, like I'm in. Like that sounds great,
Yeah. So Jeff, you're talking about like doing readings for people and things like that. So could you just talk a little bit about Soul Force Awakening and your book and just kind of what in general you do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I wrote a book, Awakening Soul Force, a practical guide to awakening the truth within. And it's just it's kind of a spiritual seeker's like experimental guide. It was my journey the last several years, or last almost 20 years, with meditation and spirituality and the stuff that worked for me, and some stuff about my journey with spirituality. And then nowadays I do like intuitive guidance and intuitive readings for people. So I get quiet, I get still, I meditate, I open up, and I start feeling stuff that people feel. And I use that information to help kind of guide them where they're at on their journey, and help them express things that want to be expressed, help them unblock energy that seems like it's kind of locked up. And a core of that, a core piece of that is also teaching people meditation. So teaching others how to get still, get quiet, and open up to their own sort of self-awareness.
And have you noticed because you were doing that before COVID, right? And have you noticed like a big change, or has there been a shift or something since this?
Yeah, there really has, actually. It's funny. I started posting for the first 2 weeks. I was posting daily meditations. I was just posting up, and a lot of people were watching the videos, and a lot of people were responding. And it's funny because now over the last several weeks, like the amount of readings have increased, the amount of people that are engaging, like with the live videos and stuff that I'm doing in the Awakening Soul Force group, has increased. People are asking for meditation tips. People are sending me castings because, like, I guess meditation instructors are now cool and they're in. Like these people, like people are already seeing this explosion of like interest. So like, yeah, let's find some meditation people, and it's been really interesting.
Oh, and Shannon, you also you direct people. Obviously, you're directing like a show and whatnot. But you also help people like in general. Just like, have you noticed a shift in how your business has gone when coaching people and whatnot, like in a pre-COVID versus COVID world? Like, what's that been like?
I would actually, to kind of, really sort of echo what Jeff is saying. It's interesting, Jeff, because with my work, I've always studied and incorporated mindfulness and intuitive work and that sort of thing. But with this for me, there was a shift because with this whole experience, it really pushed me to separate and actually add that as a separate service. So independently doing readings with people and doing the intuitive work apart from creative work is something that I recently added to my offerings because I felt called. But I also feel, to answer your question, Rich, that a lot of that also came from finding that I'm seeing more people kind of just connect with being in that space. That it's just naturally, I think, because it's something that is so big collectively. It's like, rarely are there things that are so big collectively and so big individually, that you're going through something that you're like, there's this major thing we're all going through. Yeah. And there's also this epic thing I'm going through. And people are trying to kind of harmonize those two, back and forth. And I think that naturally sort of brings you to this level of like kind of digging into like your own mythology, of like what's going on in your personal hero journey, not just like what's going on with all the pieces and what do I do about my budget or my thing or my job, but also just kind of like, why is this happening to me? Like there's a why is this happening to us? And then there's a why is this happening to me? And I think when I really started asking that myself at the beginning, then I got super passionate about wanting to dig into that question with people because they're like, everyone's asking it, whether they know it or not, they're going like, why the hell is this happening to me now? So
you're saying that there's like, because we're all going through this, but you're saying that there is a component where individuals are not really thinking about how everyone else is going through it and more about just kind of how it's affecting them kind of thing?
Yeah, and I think also what I mean by that too is like in a deeper way. of like, what is this creating an opportunity for me in a deeper way? Why is this happening to me right now on my particular path with the challenges I'm facing or the things I need to learn, or the ways I personally need to shift, the way we, globally also are acknowledging all these ways we need to shift. I think people are sort of being smacked in the face with that a bit, or if they're, in touch with that or aware of that, that they're stopping and going, like I say, why now? And what can I do with this to make it, to bring that opportunity out of it and make something out of this, For
me personally, I feel like something that I've I don't know if learned about or discovered, I don't know the right terminology, but definitely a shift I've noticed is that in a pre-COVID world, I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I keep throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what happens. And then when COVID hit, I was like, I have to do something now. Like, it gave me an extreme sense of urgency, and I've been creating more and doing more ever since. And, if this had happened to me, even as recently as 6 months or a year ago, especially longer than that, I'm pretty sure I would have just crawled in a hole and just, sucked my thumb in the fetal position for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I'm not dogging anyone who's going through that, because, like, everyone's in their own journey. But I mean, for me personally, like, I'm just so grateful that I've been through so much that this is like, yeah, this is bigger, but it's kind of like the big fight at the end of the Rocky. I've been training this whole time and didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you're shaking your head voraciously. Talk.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, but you got something. Tell me.
Just it's so funny that you're saying that, because this is a very much a common theme that I'm seeing with people. And even when this whole thing hit, the first thing I felt was like, oh my God, I think I've been preparing for this my entire life. Now I'm going to start meditating with people, and like, boom, they were there. But I feel like a lot of people who are like creative, people who really care about people. I mean, I feel like a lot of people have felt activated by this. And it's like, I feel like in a lot of ways it's activated like the deepest parts of our humanity. So you're watching artists like create, and I love watching like your covers and stuff, right? Like, I didn't even know that you could sing. He's fantastic. He does live. He totally crushes live. Which one did you do? Which one? I forget. I was like,
Crashes.
yes. Yeah, that's such a good song. And, I'm just watching my friends that are really talented be talented and like not caring anymore. We're not worried about production value and who cares about what, like, let's just sing to each other and make music, or let's make movies together and do stuff that's goofy, or let's meditate together. It's just, I've seen a massive emergence of humanity, at least in my circle. And I think that's been a really cool thing to watch. And for anybody who maybe is really going through it and maybe is in that position, like you were talking about earlier, where you're feeling a little bit worn out by it or scared or kind of freaked out, I would just encourage people to open up to those friends who are kind of stepping into their vibe and into their light, and just try and open up to that, and maybe like take a little risk yourself. Well, what have you been dying to do for the last 20, 30, 40 years? And shoot, like, let's just do it. Like, what do we got to lose? COVID's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I think it's like just knowing that we all have access to basically the same platform now, right? It's like, you don't have to rent out a room at Second City to have a class. You don't have to go to a studio to record. Like, no one can do anything. So it's like, if we all have the same thing, why we have access? I mean, obviously some people are going to have, better computers, microphones, cameras in their homes and different things like that. But I mean, for the most part, we're all just sitting here on two-dimensional screens trying to connect to each other. Shannon, what about you? What for your individual journey? Where has this met you?
I think it's really like a combination of everything everyone's said so far, because like you, I think both just sort of the, like, how your world shrinks, by being stuck in one place makes you look at things. I think, being honest that sort of underlying facing your mortality aspect with there being an actual pandemic going on, makes you look at things. And so I definitely felt that sort of urgency you talked about, of feeling like certain things fell away fast, because it just sort of, sort of narrows your focus, and you really want to look at more what's important and kind of strip away the rest. And so, I physically decluttered everything I possibly could. I tried to mentally declutter everything. But at the same time, I was definitely left with kind of looking at some of the unanswered questions too, of where I wanted my focus to go. And so, like you guys, I felt very prepared for this, but I also felt like there was a level of, okay, this is like the advanced course now, of like, I've been preparing for this, but then now there's the advanced course, and I know there's like something I'm even going to move through, I'm going to move through something even more for a reason, and so I've just been kind of in the process of that and really, simplifying and looking at those things and trying to be honest. And that's one of the things I think I've been encouraging people I work with is that like, this is a really great time to sort of feel the space to just like get really real with yourself, about what matters to you and where, what doesn't, and kind of cut those things away,
Yeah. So I assume we all three agree on this, but fact check me if we don't. But it seems to me fairly obvious that tragedy, struggle, any kind of hardship is always some kind of a fulcrum. It's a turning point for everyone, right? Like you go through something hard, a family member dies, or you lose all your money, or say something happens to you, and it's like it defines who we are based on how we treat that, right? And now we're all going through, like the whole world's going through this thing. And it seems like what you're saying, both of you, and I'm noticing this too, is that people are really showing like kind of, it's like we're being stripped to our bare selves, and we're figuring out like, what am I now? Because who I was in this pre-COVID world may be similar to who I am, but it's not the same, and it may be totally different. Is that jive right? You're both nodding your head, so I'm assuming we're all
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like the using the language of kind of like a stripping away is a really good way to frame it, because I personally feel that way too, with some of the things that have just been coming up. It's interesting, the stuff like that I have to look at is the stuff that I'm typically just too busy to look at,
Yeah.
So even though things have gotten a little busy with all this other stuff, there's still so much time to not leave the house. So just be sitting in the quiet house. So there's been a lot of stuff, and what's interesting for me has been like anger, and like kind of that righteous anger where you're mad at like the world for screwing over people and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, where does that come? And it keeps coming up, and it's sneaking up. Like there's stuff going on here at the local HOA. There's obviously stuff that goes on politically, but I've had to take a good hard look at that and be like, why does this trigger me so much? And why am I losing my mind? And that's been kind of an interesting thing to look at,
Have you come to any conclusions, or is it more like still just going through the process?
It's been, I have realized that there is still an element of fight and struggle. And I feel like part of my growth is to try and kind of transcend that thing. Like there doesn't have to be a fight and a struggle. Like this is just unconscious action. It's just not awake. It's just, it's like sleepwalking. And it's like a little kid who, runs around and almost throws their fingers in the socket. You don't get super mad and be like, hey, you stupid idiot. Like that's fingers, you're going to stick your finger there and you get electrocuted. Well, they don't know. And even though we're dealing with human beings, then we're adults, and it's complex economics and politics and stuff. It's like, it's still unawakened behavior. And so there's an element of like my perspective shifting. It's like, you can't let it get to you and give away your peace that way, because this is just, they're not there yet in their process. And you're gonna have to be okay with that one way or the other and figure out how to deal with it,
Yeah. Is what you're saying kind of like accepting that you can't control other things, and when other people do things like maybe the president, and you want to be upset, but you're just like, this does no one any good. I got to let it go. Is that kind of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, because I can't control that. And the reality is, unless I can have a face-to-face conversation with a human being, me screaming at a television or the internet or throwing my laptop across the room literally does no good. It just cost me $1,200, and like that's a problem.
Yeah.
So.
Fair.
And it's now your problem, not theirs. So.
Yeah, you can't bill them for that. Like, you owe me a laptop. Shannon, what have you found like that's stripping away?
I agree with you, Jeff, that just like, no matter how busy we can make ourselves or extra problems we have, new problems we have to solve or things like that, that there is still a quiet, that's there, and things are going to come up. And just also, I think the inability to change your environment sort of keeps you from that escapism, and so it's like that, I think, really brings things to the surface. And so for me, I would say that it's really more like that abstract grief, that I think we all carry some level of grief. And I have noticed this with a lot of people I'm working with too, where they're feeling heavy, they're feeling upset, they're overwhelmed by the situation, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's about what's happening, and they kind of don't know where it's coming from, but they just feel like emotions are coming to the surface. And I feel like for me that I've had some of that, where it just comes in waves, where it's almost just like, I could say the same way I've, cleaned out spaces, that it's like, oh, there's those cobwebs are coming up. And then it's like, can I find what it is? Can I identify where it's coming from and just kind of let it come out, because it's just whatever my normal operating is like on top of, like whatever's there that's just been kind of pushed down. And I was also thinking too, when you guys were talking, that I forget what it was someone said that reminded me, but I'm curious, both of your experience, if you feel like you're having any waves of sort of like childhood moments, because I think both the enjoyment of simple things, that's more like when you're a kid, where it's like to even be outside for 5 minutes, to like stand in a park for 5 minutes is like amazing. Yeah. And when you're little, your world is this small, you have your home, when you're really little, you rarely leave it, it's just your world is really tiny. And so getting up in the morning, what you eat, going to bed, what your bedtime is, like all those things are very childlike. And so for me, I've noticed that it's kind of making more of that, like my memory kind of, roll through a bit more, or again, I'm reconnecting with things that I enjoyed as a kid. I threw a baseball around, got hit in the face, as you guys know.
Yeah, you got hit in the face with a baseball. That didn't happen in a pre-COVID world.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been interesting too. So and with like the weird dreams at night and everything. Oh, God, so I'm curious if you guys have had any of that sort of, even just kind of vague, touching back to that simplicity of being a kid at all, because that's been an interesting aspect too.
I had something very simple last night. I was talking on, or maybe it was 2 nights ago, I don't even remember now, but I was talking on Zoom with someone just on a personal call, and I was on my couch just kind of sitting and doing this, and the thought occurred to me that as a child I would often like sit on the floor, or I'd sit in different positions, but as an adult I almost always sit in kind of the regular position. If I'm in a recliner, my feet are up. If I'm not, but I mean, it's basically the same. So I just sat on my bed at kind of like on my stomach, with my elbows up, just looking at the phone, and just like with my feet up, kind of like that stereotypical like 1960s female on the phone thing, or whatever, from like Bye Bye Birdie, like you think, oh, that, and I was just sitting like that, or whatever, that sitting, I was in that position, just thinking like, I don't even remember the last time I've been in this position. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I've got to find new ways to treat this same apartment.
Wish I had put it nearby so I could show you guys, but I ordered a rotary phone.
Oh, awesome.
I haven't hooked up my line yet, but I've got a rotary phone. And I had the most interesting conversation with an AT&T rep trying to find out if actual telephone lines even existed anymore in my neighborhood, because they wouldn't believe me that I wanted to get telephone service. They just they couldn't comprehend it. It was like some guy, quarantined at home with his kids in the South, Texas or something, who was just like, are you sure you want a landline?
He's like, Jerry, did Jerry put you up to this? Is this a prank? Is this because it's my birthday next week?
Exactly. So I'll probably still do the voice over internet version, but we do have a corded phone, and I ordered my 25-foot long phone cord to be able to drag it around the house.
I've been thinking about doing a landline too.
Nice.
What?
I swear. So we're not just going back to childhood. We're like time traveling.
I know. That's. I feel like it's funny because I've had this, war with technology, and I don't know if either of you are familiar with the book Digital Minimalism.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
But it's a great book. I think both of you would find it interesting, even if your tech isn't one of your things you're looking at. But I've had this war with like how to make the most of it, but also how to simplify and kind of use intention, with what I do and don't want to be a part of and all of that. So it's a great book exploring it. And so quarantine has been really funny because it's been this combination of like pushing me into pools of technology that I've been resistant about and just being all in and really grateful and accepting and loving that I can play board games online with my friends and family and, all that stuff. And then the part of me that's like, got a minimalist phone, got a rotary, like getting a landline, like I read books in the yard, I turn everything off, and so it's like I'm finding that, I'm getting some of my retro time travel, and then some of it is like I'm finally embracing the future.
Oh, wow. Jeff, what made you want to get a landline? Like what this, I don't even understand anything either of you are saying right now.
Well, truthfully, I've always had an issue with like my service in here.
Yeah.
And so because I'm on the phone so much now, there's so many things going on the phone. It is actually more of a practical thing. Like, oh, I think I actually might need a landline because I'm tired of calls dropping and stuff like that, or like standing in the one corner where I get service like for 3 hours, So I thought it might be a good idea. And then also the girl that I've been seeing, she's in Idaho right now with her family, and she's calling from a landline, and they're like homesteaders up there and stuff. And the landline was like so clear, and I was like, yeah, I want that. I don't want crackling. I don't want feedback. I want a nice steady line, and that's what happened.
I love it. So I've been reading a lot of Seth Godin lately. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but one thing that I think I'm discerning it correctly, that he's talking about is this idea that we got to this point to where we started making everything about production and numbers and just bigger, faster, stronger, that kind of thing. And he was saying this long before COVID, but he was talking about how he predicts that the world is going to go not necessarily backwards, but forwards in a way that's going to be kind of similar to certain ways of where it's going to be more about, like, you're not going to just buy something because it's the cheapest. You're going to buy something because it's like you care about the company or the person who's making it, that kind of thing. It's going to, he believes that that it's looking like we're going to be like more, there's going to be less Coca-Colas in the world and more like Jones Sodas or Tom's Shoes. These companies that like really matter, that stand for something other than cheap goods and things like that. We all sell our own services, for a living. So we kind of already do that, but I feel like COVID's pushing us in that way to see things as more personal and less just machine crank it out factory style. Does that jive with what you're experiencing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that it does go that way, because I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, like discovering that you sing or all these talents that my other friends have, you start to realize how diverse your network is. And it just makes more sense to like go to your friends and go to your family and keep your business local, or keep the collaborations and the projects real tight. And I don't know, there's something kind of encouraging about that. I like the way the world has felt smaller, and it feels more meaningful to support small businesses or local artists or your friends, that are doing their thing. And I think that is part of the thing that we will see is, I think hopefully it makes us more connected. And when it's not just like this giant global thing and these big monstrous corporations and stuff, what naturally comes with that is more humanity, right? Because there's more connection, there's more grassroots. And I feel that. I definitely feel that. How about you, Shannon?
Yeah, I totally agree. And there was, I wish I could remember the name to cite him, but there was a video I was watching with a guy who does some YouTube videos on minimalism. And again, when I'm referring to that, my approach, or where I sort of fit in with that community, is more about what both of you are talking about, which instead of getting rid of things arbitrarily just for the sake of getting rid of, it's the idea of like really being clear on what's of value to you and having more of that and less of things that aren't, whether it's people or things or whatever it is. And in this video that I was watching, this guy was saying it's a really interesting time because since people are forced to stay at home with their stuff, it forces them to look around and like really look at what is and isn't of value. And obviously there, as we've heard on the news, with LA, people dumping things at Goodwill, there's like plenty of people who are like, moving through everything and clearing through. But again, not even worrying about the emphasis on things. It's just that concept of actually having to face what's important to you and what's of value. And I do think that there's this strong desire right now, because we can see it, like we can physically see it in front of us because we're slowing down and we're looking around at it, that there, for me, definitely. And yeah, what I see in the world and what people are talking about and the actions that they're taking, that it's like this sense of like really wanting to support what matters to me and really wanting to move away from what's been a waste of my space or a waste of my time or a waste of my money or, any of those things. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the really amazing benefits that's coming out of this. And I think it's really cool.
Because I mean, that is kind of the world that but like the general we have built, right? To where of course there's going to be clutter. Of course there's going to be stuff that people don't care about because we just crank out stuff. It's more production, more everything. And yeah, we have lost a little bit of our humanity. I think that's one thing I loved about what's her name? The minimalist, she's Japanese.
Marie Kondo.
Marie Kondo. Like what I loved about her
Yeah.
is she's like, don't just get rid of something. Thank the thing for being a part of your life, right? And then get rid of it. I know it sounds hippy dippy as hell, but we're three all on board. It's like, like, thank you, shirt that I haven't worn in 10 years. Thank you for being part of my life. I'm gonna let you go now. Because if you just like cut things out, that's not human either, right? It's there's a process.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Oh no, I just, if you have something else to comment on there, keep going. Mine was that I was going to kind of go another direction because I just know that I'm spending a lot less money, which is really great.
Oh yeah, right.
Like talking about stripping down, like what do you find valuable? What do you really need? Like I'm eating better. I'm not eating out as much.
Yes.
You know, it's like I'm cooking. I'm doing all kinds of stuff and saving tons of money.
I was thinking the other day, I'm like, it's really sad that it took a pandemic to get me to cook. It's like,
I know.
I wasn't raised with cooking, so that's one of those things. Like I've always been on like, the back end of learning how to do. And the other day it was just like, I just so simply, threw some cauliflower into roast and was like, this easy. You realize, right? Like this is not hard. I'm not talking gourmet. I'm just like cooking my own vegetables.
Yeah. I still don't really cook, but like, I mean, everything I don't eat out either. So I just like heat up, that kind of stuff at home. But I've had to been doing that for the last year and a half. So again, prepared. We're all prepared.
Yeah.
Not some of us weren't. Some people were not prepared.
Yeah.
So there's a quote that I came across just literally this morning that I'd like to read for you. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it goes like this. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, and I don't think I think Brene Brown put it on her Instagram or something, but it was Sonia Renee Taylor. I don't know who that is, but I guess who said it. But I mean, I just like when I read that quote, I was like, please, everyone agree with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know I've said it a couple times, and to what that quote is saying, I've been in a long process. Again, this is a lifelong journey of me. Minimalism is a good word for how I've tried to lead my life, both materially and spiritually. Keeping it really simple. But even now, and with all this stuff, I feel more human than I have in my entire life, honestly, in the sense that even taking away the gym, the first 2 weeks without a gym was kind of like hard for me. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like go outside and just be outside like a kid, going back to that childlike stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm never going to go back to a gym ever again because they're disgusting, So, but yeah, I feel more grounded in my humanity in this time than I ever have. And I think it's just because there is time to really sit with stuff that comes up. There's time to create, there's time to connect with friends like we're doing now. And there's times, there's a lot of time. And I feel like that's something that time has been, it's so scarce in the culture that we exist in, and it's nice to get that back.
I even find myself being guilty in moments whenever I hear about something that, and usually it's obviously based on something totally false because we're still in a real unknown, sort of uncertain time frame of what's happening with this. But anytime there's any kind of sense of like, well, maybe we'll be able to do X, Y, Z and get everything going again in 2 or 3 weeks, I actually feel this like inner resistance that goes, don't take my quarantine away, because of what you're talking about. Not because of like wanting to hide out at home, but because of the shift that's happening, like you say, and this sense of like, no, please let it happen. Like everybody get on board and let this happen, and not wanting something to kind of swoop in and let everybody go back to sleep, because I really connect with that quote and what you're talking about, the energy behind it.
I mean, I have the same thing. Like, I kind of want this quarantine to last for a while. And I know that, on the surface, that sounds terrible because there's people dying and there's, hospital workers going through stuff. But I mean, I'm being partly selfish, but I'm also think that, just like what we've all been saying is that I think that in a way, in parts of it are good for humanity. It's forcing us to get in touch with ourselves, see what's actually valuable in our lives, do some things we would normally do, assess those kinds of things. And while it absolutely is terrible for those who are, getting the short end of the stick on this, like for those who are going to come out on the other end, I think we're going to be better people for it. I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I also hope, like to what you're saying about the people who are going through it right now, the people who are really on the front lines doing a lot of really hard work, I think we almost owe it to them to not go back to normal, so that when it does come down, we're like, yo, we got you. It's cool. Take some time off. Enjoy your time. Like, let us take care of you. I mean, I feel like there's a bit of an exchange that needs to take place with the people that have been on the front lines and have like been kind of kicked into hyperdrive with this. They need time to heal and recover. And I think I think we almost owe it to each other to just be like, hold a space that says, we're not going back to normal. You get time now. Like, we got time. You got time now.
Wow.
Well, and like you say, to kind of give that outcome as a gift, that I think it also kind of comes to that mentality too about what's even happening on the front lines of like, if everything is just that broken fix model of like, something's broken and we have to rush to fix it. And then we got through that. We haven't gained anything versus like a deeper level of healing that's wanting to happen right now. And that can have an outcome for people that are having to be in the thick of it all, that it's like that greater healing should be what they get to have been a part of, and that all their efforts have been worth, what they've had to sacrifice, to almost like make the space for the rest of us to do the other job, like I feel like in some ways, like you're saying, that's our responsibility. They've got to take care of that. And we've got to take care of like the greater, more kind of abstract element that since there's no one I can rescue right now in my living room, I need to be making different choices and generating, a shift in our culture so that that's what we're giving back to them. And we're meeting them with the same level of sort of focus or intention or effort, to be a part of the healing too, I think.
Yeah. God, we need better leaders, right? Like just in general. And I don't mean, and I'm not just talking about the president, but I mean, sure. Right. But like we all need to be better leaders. We all need to be like more consciously living, taking stock of like how we're interacting with people, how we're treating ourselves, how we're treating our stuff, how we're treating our systems. Like we all need to be doing this. Like, we need to be leading this transition because not everyone's going to know how to do it. Not everyone's going to even realize that that it would be helpful to do it. But like, there's people like us who are like saying like, hey, life can be better than it was. And this is the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, we need to do that. We need to step out in a big way as it moves forward, I think, as in every way that we possibly can, and there's a million different ways to do it with our votes and with our dollar and with the stuff that we do and the space we hold for people. I do feel like this has all brought to the surface a stark contrast where I always have felt the heart of our people, especially like in our country, are like really good people that will take care of each other. I think the contrast between the heart of America and what goes on in state houses or in Washington has become like, because it's a lot less thoughtful, and they're just not. It's very reactive, to what Shannon was saying. I feel like if we talk about what goes on economically and politically, it's very now. Get it for what's going on right now, but there's not a lot of foresight, and it's like this kind of thing is going to happen again, right? Like this kind of a COVID thing's going to happen. So are we going to put the stuff in place to make sure that we're all taken care of, that our healthcare workers and first responders don't have to go through this again when it does happen again? Like, and that is on us to step out and be a part of that in every way that we possibly can.
I think that's such a great point, Jeff, because that's something that's kind of crossed my mind of at least hoping that this sort of brings more attention back to the long game, because we have been so instant gratification oriented as a society, and just by having to slow our days down again And by not knowing exactly what's going to come next, and a lot of people having to sort of start from scratch and rebuild again and think more long term, it's like, I know it might be a little contradictory because, again, we're leaning so heavily on technology, and that can be a very fast and, gratification oriented thing. But I do still feel like that's coming up. And I think you're right that obviously the major part of it is because how we got here is by not paying attention to foresight and to, the outcomes of our actions as individuals and as societies and everything. But I would really love that, kind of in harmony with that, again, back to like micro, macro, that if the micro is like a greater appreciation for like the slowness of our day and being in the present moment and having more attention to how we spend our moments and value, that sort of the greater change would be like an appreciation again for the long term as larger communities, and building things again that are more lasting and more have stronger foundations and have like greater bird's eye view to them. And
I love everything that we're all saying here. If we could boil it down into like one thing that's a practical thing, because like a lot we're talking about is very general and overarching, and it's very helpful, but like if someone's watching this who just wants like one thing that they can do or think or whatever that can help them just in a practical way during this time or any time, like what's one just like bullet point they could wrap their head around that we could offer them?
Question.
Stumper. I'll start by just saying that for me, the idea of more white space in the calendar in general, like literally, if you've got something at 3 to 4, if at all possible, don't schedule something at 4, right? Like literally give yourself time, and not just time to get other things done on your to-do list, which I'm the number one offender of, like, oh, I've got time, I'll do this, then this, but like give yourself time to not to have unplanned time. Mm-hmm. Whether you meditate with that or do something healthy, or whether you just do nothing. Like, I think we need more of that.
Yeah, I kind of want to second that. I think I feel like that's probably one of the best pieces of advice that we could all take from this, because like you said, it doesn't matter what you fill it with. I'm inclined to encourage people to, spend 20 minutes. Like if you got 20 minutes, meditate. Because a lot of times you're not going to give yourself that. It's a perfect time to allow things to just become aware of what's coming up, what's going on emotionally for real. So we're not like glazing over those things so they, come up and explode at a later time. But I'm just as big of a proponent of, like, if you got 30 minutes, like write a song, sing a song, write your script or write a poem, take some pictures with your phone, like go just wander around in the park for a minute. It's like, anything to just create space that you're not doing, I think is important.
Of course, I completely agree with you guys. But I would just
This is a non-controversial show. There's no debating. I disagree with your way of meditating.
And just kind of just expanding on, really. I think, and this, I guess, for me goes back to what we're talking about with the sort of trying to be a part of the change, but in a manageable way, like you're talking about. Because the one thing I hesitate whenever I get into really lofty concepts is to not sound like I'm over here being Jesus, like I've just got it all figured out, and like morning till night, my Zoom calls just change the world. We're all like doing this from a very human, normal, balanced place. But I think that sort of small way that you can both do for yourself and let that be a part of the greater shift is, again, kind of just looking at what you value most, embracing that, like being okay with it, going, if my number one thing is my creativity, or my number one thing is my connection to my family, and not only giving over to that more and making more space for it. Like I say, so much of this is making space, but making space for it, but also sharing it so that other people can be inspired by the same way that you embrace your values. So, maybe if it's the way, like I say, if your connection to your family is really important, that you're not just kind of holding that within yourself, but you're reaching out to your family going, hey, you know what I've realized in this situation is, like, I really value my relationships with you guys. And if there's some new ways that we can meet more regularly or stay more in touch or be closer, like, I just want you to know that's really come clear for me. And even someone hearing that has an impact, you know, or if you are really appreciating being outside and you're like, you know, having a picnic outside would be so amazing. Someone walking by and seeing you have a picnic outside is going to have that imprint their consciousness of just like, yeah, a picnic in the park. I haven't done that since I was 8. Like, I want to have a picnic in the park. You know, it's just like having your authentic values and allowing yourself to share them visibly in the community, I think is enough, you know, as a starting place.
So where can people find you? Let's plug sites, Facebooks, whatever we got. Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me mostly on the Awakening Soul Force group is where I spend the most time on social media. So if you look up Awakening Soul Force on the Facebook group, we're talking meditation and spirituality and metaphysics and intuition. I'm facilitating 4 nights a week now on there. Just kind of like stuff about meditation, intuition, and I do live readings on Thursday nights. But there's some other really wonderful facilitators that are coming in, like shamanic healers, people that do like sound baths, mediums. So there's a lot of really interesting folks that are really dedicated to helping people right now, especially in this time. We're all kind of trapped. So that would be a great place to have people. And you can find me on Instagram at the Bomberger as well. I post a lot of stuff up there. And
people can find your book, of course.
Yeah, you can find the book, Awakening Soul Force, at thesoulforce.com, or you can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So if you're bored and need some reading, that would be awesome.
Excellent. Shannon, where can people find you?
I am www.muselabcreative.com. My coaching business is called Muse Lab. And right now I'm actually offering a significant discount on all my services for anyone alone in quarantine, or anyone who's gifting to someone alone in quarantine, just because I'm really sensitive to that. Suits some people, but for some people that's an incredible struggle. So I just wanted to, put that out there to hopefully be able to work with people more easily who might need a little more collaboration and community and inspiration in their situation. And then hopefully I'll have to come back on your show later, Rich, for a product I'm working on in the workshop, physical something. So hopefully in the future we can all regroup and
oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's easy to make this happen. It's even with the 3 of us, I think we only had to reschedule like once or twice. So like we'll definitely happen. I feel like if anyone's watching, whoever watches this episode, like I think that bringing the 3 of us together and just talking, I think is healing and helpful and eye-opening to a lot of people, or just a lovely mirror of what people are thinking, but we're putting words to it. So thank you both so much for being on the show. I love having good people on the show, and you 2 are the best people I know, and I really appreciate it.
Dude, thanks for having me. This is a blast. It's good to see both of you.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you both so much. So it's been a nice little afternoon party.
Yeah.
Hang out with you guys.
Afternoon party. All right.